Welcome, Marek. How many
Thank you.
times have you been welcome as a rock star?
Not many, not many.
Not many. You have a lot of speaking opportunities lately, probably back in the day when you co-founded Atrapalo as well, but right now with Kantox as a chairman, like, how are you representing a company as a chairman, and where have you been speaking lately?
First, with Atrapalo, we didn't give any talks. We didn't go anywhere. We were just working our asses off. And for years, I mean, we were really kept low profile. We didn't attend any events because we kind of thought it was not time well spent. With Kantox, it's a little bit different. We try to keep high public profile, but I still don't give many talks because we have a very good CEO.
Yeah.
And he loves going to events and give talks, and he has a very cool French accent, and so I let him do all the public work. It's just that today I'm here because...
One of the things you guys share with Typeform, a previous company, is that the co-founders, one from Spain, the other one from abroad. How do you think that impacts the culture and helps them to establish in Barcelona?
This is actually a very interesting question because naturally, because I'm a Slovakian and I've been living here for many years, any startup I participate in is international by definition, by default. Okay, so
lots of them are.
So Atrapalo was international, Typeform is international, Kantox is international, and there are many, and I think proportionally there is more startups or startups with traction with international team than pure one nationality startups. And I don't think that's because the foreigners are more proactive than the Spanish entrepreneurs. I just think that the fact that you leave your home country and go somewhere else is a sign of kind of ambition or activity that you want to have in your life, the type of lifestyle, and this makes it the foreign entrepreneurs more prevalent. I think it's very useful in the day-to-day session to have different nationalities involved in a startup. So in Kantox we have a Spanish guy and a French guy, American guy, and a Slovak, and many other nationalities.
Let's talk about fintech, because Spain is not a great landscape to create a fintech company, right? Most of them, they incorporate in the UK, but they keep operations here. Was that your case? Why did you do it?
We actually started Kantox before the whole big fintech wave.
Yeah.
Okay, so we were doing this foreign exchange or fintech before it was called fintech. And it was obvious that it had to be a regulated company. And when we started investigating how to do it, we realized that there is one place in wide Europe that is really good at regulating these things, and that is London. And the reason for everybody being regulated in London is that it's a kind of virtuous cycle. All the markets are in London, so the regulator, he knows what's happening on the market and how to regulate. Whereas the other regulators, they're not that sure about all this kind of new stuff, and so they prefer to sit back and be very passive. And that's what was happening with when we looked at regulation in Spain. And so we just decided to go to London to be regulated there, the headquarters there, and the operation is here for obvious reasons that you already covered in the previous talk.
So do you think, actually that was going to be my next question, so you can answer, but in terms of hiring, because everybody's struggling, and I think that you can share some sort of advice to entrepreneurs here that are struggling to hire a co-founder or CTO, most of them, or developers, how do you attract them to Kantox? What's the differential point?
Our CTO joined Kantox at one of the startup weekend events where there are two co-founders. None of them was of technical profile, and they clearly had a gap there. And how do you attract him? Well, the story of what they wanted to build was attractive enough so that he left Hewlett-Packard, or where he was before, and joined the company. So actually, finding that CTO or whatever is missing in the composition of the team, you do it not through, I don't think you do it through perks or salary or not even through a kind of stock option plan. I think the primary reason for a good person to join the project is the kind of purpose and objective of that project.
Let's talk about what does Kantox do for people here who haven't done their homework and they don't know what Kantox is about, and how did you apply this to Barcelona?
Okay, so here comes the company pitch.
Company pitch.
No, not really. Kantox is a fintech company, and what we do is we solve currency problems for other companies. So companies that export, import, or are international by nature, they need to manage multiple currencies. And this creates all kinds of problems and risks. And so not only you have your own business and you try to sell as much as possible in as many markets possible as you can, but you have to have somebody or a team of people taking care of all these exchanges. Because if you don't take care of that, currency rates change, go up, down, and you lose all the profit margin, and you may even lose money. You're selling more and more, and you're losing more and more money. Okay? So the way to do this is to manage that risk properly. But once you reach certain size, to manage that risk properly, that currency risk, is a really difficult task. And that's where Kantox comes in. And we automate it, and we make it really easy for the company. So the CFO guy, he can just sit back. He has to do some work. But once he defines it, we automate everything so well that he just sits and monitors everything that's going in and out of the company, multiple currencies. And it's really, there is no artificial intelligence, no machine learning about it. Or we don't use this kind of trendy words, but it's a very useful tool. It's a very useful platform that solves really difficult problems to a lot of companies.
In a conversation yesterday, you were mentioning that once you are in the company, it's really hard to get out because none of the banks can match your value proposition. Can you explain that to the audience?
That is correct. When we started, of course, we're learning every day. Okay, so when we started, it was all about price competition. We thought, okay, we built something from scratch. It will be so lean that we will just crash all those competitors by outpricing them. All those competitors, I mean banks. Mm-hmm. And it worked. I mean, we really could lower the prices. We were 70, 80% cheaper than their standard providers, and companies were switching. But we realized that it's not a sustainable value proposition, just being cheaper, because then when the banks woke up, they realized they were losing interesting clients, then they started lowering the prices. So hey, if Kantox is charging you this, I will lower you the price. And as we developed that automation platform, and we plugged in the companies, we realized that it's a very good way of keeping them loyal, because we saw not only we are cheaper than the banks, but we solve this really hard problem of managing the foreign exchange risk. And so now when a bank comes and lowers the price and equals the price of Kantox, the clients say, hey, it's okay, you lower the price, but give me this thing that Kantox is doing that is really solving really hard problems. So the whole automation tools that we have makes the process super sticky.
You mentioned that you guys incorporated there, you've got the headquarters, you're actually based in London. So what other advantages has got London for fintech-specific companies over Barcelona?
The two main advantages why we are there actively is a very sophisticated regulator and access to liquidity, meaning we need to get those dollars and Thai baht and rupees and what we need for our clients. We need to get it from somewhere. And all these liquidity providers, be it a bank or a hedge fund or any other financial player, is in London. So those are the reasons to be there. The reasons to be here are just like, I have a side note on Typeform.
Sure.
I'm one of those guys who did not see Typeform when they were sitting in front of me explaining the project. So it's in my it's my entire portfolio of investment that I passed on.
Okay.
And
We will cut that off of the video if you want, but you know, lots of people pass on that opportunity. And speaking about that, I wanted to know, is it easier for fintech companies also to raise funds in the UK specifically?
We actually never raised funds in the UK. We raised funds here. The first seed round we raised here, and then the following rounds we raised with a French VC or two, both of them French. But I do think there is a lot more. There is a lot more capital available in London for fintech than it is here.
How are you competing with your competitors? Because obviously, Kantox, I think you guys led a really interesting campaign when you sponsored the underdog of the Formula One team.
Yeah.
Remember that one? It was amazing. You guys blogged about it, about why we decided to fund or to sponsor a team that was going bankrupt. And you literally, I think Philippe told us in our event that the sponsorship was like, I don't know, 4,000 euros, 10,000 euros, like nothing, and you got all your logos in Formula One. Can you explain about that, and how did you do it? How did you find out, by the way?
Well, when you don't have marketing budget, you try to do things that are different in nature, that differentiate you somehow. And it was a moment when we were trying to get a lot of press because we were building credibility. Kantox is a fintech company. Money flows through Kantox. And companies or the CFO or CEOs, they have to believe that they send this startup money and the next day they get the money back in different currency. So there must be a lot of trust between the client and a lot more than in just a normal SaaS company. And so we're trying to build that credibility, and we realized that there was one guy of our team was really into Formula One and racing, and there was this team that was so poorly funded that one or two races before the end of the season, they just didn't have any budget, and they thought they could not finish the championship because they were running out of money, and so they decided to crowdfund. I don't know where the race was, Abu Dhabi race. They decided to crowdfund it. And they said, okay, so we're crowdfunding, and you can buy a logo on the wheel for 500 or 5,000 pounds, and this and that, and there was a list. And so we looked at what we could do, and we spent like 5,000 pounds, and we got a small logo. It was not all over. It was a small logo. Okay?
But it was in Formula One.
It was a small logo on Formula One, on the weakest team, but the beauty of it is what we did with it, okay? It was the weakest team, it was one race, it was, and we thought, okay, now let's spin it, okay? And that's when we wrote a very good, very well-reasoned story about why we support underdogs, because we are underdog, the big banks and us, and this small team versus McLaren and Ferraris. There was a very easy and kind of cool analog. And everybody in general, we kind of like underdogs. When underdog does well, and it's a cool story. And so we spinned it. We wrote a nice LinkedIn post because we get a lot of virality there. And then we sent the press release to newspapers. And because Kantox was kind of hot already, the article titles that came up was Kantox becomes a sponsor in Formula One.
Yeah. Clickbait.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, wow. I mean, that's a statement. That's a statement. And then people usually don't read much, so they read this and it stays in their mind. If they read the article, they would realize that this was a tiny logo on the bump. Worked well.
One of the advice, because you guys in fintech or other startups that their potential clients are governments or big corporates, they don't want to be perceived as startups because that doesn't build trust with the corporate sector. What have you done in that regard that helped you getting like really big clients like the banks or other institutions?
This is very, very true. Generally speaking, if you are selling B2B, you don't want to be perceived
kind of
as
like
a startup.
Cytel as well. They had the same problem.
Who?
Cytel.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't want to be perceived as a startup because it goes against that whole trust, credibility thingy. And the more expensive your product is, the less startup-ish you want to look. And so the way we went about it, they still call us startup. But the way we tried to solve it was to communicate very clearly the growth that we were having. So, and we never said, hey, we stopped using, the startup word was prohibited in all the press releases and everything that came out of Kantox. And we talked a lot about the transactional volume that we did, about the size of the rounds that we raised. We tried to focus it on the business, not as much on financing rounds, on business, and repeatedly we communicated the volumes that we were achieving. I don't know whether we managed to kind of eliminate or neutralize that startup image, but we tried.
Hard question, and it's going to be the last one, but one of the tactics that you probably inadvertently used is that Philippe, your CEO, is very aggressive when he speaks. He was calling the banks, they are the banksters, right?
Yes.
Did that ever fire back to you, or do you think this was a good point to get attention, probably?
Well, first, he is not, when Philippe talks about banksters, it's because he believes it.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's kind of authentic. This is not a kind of marketing gimmick because we want to position ourselves as underdog. We see day after day how the banks treat their clients. We also see how they try to compete with us, and it is often, and it's not just one bank, it is often limiting, it's often very borderline. So one example is if a company is using a bank to get their financing, their loan and everything, and they're also using them for FX, and they start using Kantox, then the bank says, well, I notice you're using Kantox. The moment you want to renew the loan, we'll talk about it, you know? So this is something that, and this is still borderline, but then there are like rumors that they try to spread. So when Philip says banksters, he believes it's banksters. Did it backfire? No, it did not. We continuously talk about the bad practice, but at the same time, we realize that maybe in the future we will set up a business model where we will work with those banks that don't do these things in a kind of collaborative way.
Let's wrap this up. What can we expect from Kantox in the next year?
I hope you can expect a few press releases about growing business numbers. And generally speaking, and there is no big announcement that we are planning to have. We are really hard at work on making the company grow.
How can we help you from Startup Grind?
We love companies. We love startups. We love startups as clients. So how can you help us? You found startups that grow really fast. That sell in many currencies, and you come to Kantox then.
All right, let's give a big round of applause for Marek.
Thank you.
All right.